Hello? Hi, this is Zia from Dental School Coach. Let me know if you can hear me. Um, I'm live and I'm online. Let me know if you can hear me. Um, I'm live and I'm online. Let me know if you can hear me. Um, I'm live and I'm online. Okay, so um, okay, I will try to minimize the background noise. I feel that there are some other people, random people outside. I'm in a big building with lots of random people around me. So I'll try to minimize the noise. But let me know if this is better. Um, but I think the reason that there is some echo, it might be because of the microphone. So let me just do something real quick. Alright guys, so I'm back and let me know if you can hear me clearly, and if there is any background noise, please let me know because I wanna make sure that there isn't any background noise, and also that we can do this webinar smoothly. Alright, so we have about a minute before I'm gonna go ahead and get started. But if you have any concern or any question, you can always, um, you can always chat on the live chat. So just let me know if you have any kind of like suggestions or whatever. So let's just wait a few minutes. In the meantime, let me know where where you're from. Type in the chat box and let me know where you're streaming from. I'd love to hear where people are listening in from, because sometimes I have people from all over the world, and sometimes just all over the U.S. But aside from that, it's just amazing how much Dental School Coach grew over the last couple of years, and I'm really I'm really uh, grateful to have to have served you guys. Um, Without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and get it started, maybe within a few minutes, because I want to give other people some time to join. I know the 5 people are watching. For those of you who are watching, nice. You're in Morocco. Great. For those of you who are watching, stay tuned. We have a great webinar for you. I have jam-packed a lot of things that I think you will really enjoy for applying to dental school. Aside from that, I think the best part of the Dental School Coach interview webinar is that I'm not going to just teach you how to answer specific questions. I'm also going to teach you how to think about other questions and how to structure different answers that you can use for multiple questions. Now, having said that, I want to make sure that you're in the right spot if you are waiting for the Dental School Coach webinar. So let me know if you are if you're excited about the webinar. Make some cheers. Let me know through chat, because I really care about what my audience think, and I am always trying to make my webinars better every day. So it's been about a month. It's been about a month that I've started, or I've done some webinars for secondary. I have been super busy. I just started graduate school at Duke. I'm doing my MBA here, which is very much different from dental school. Um, I feel like with my interest in business now, I feel like MBA would be very valuable going forward. But anyhow, I just wanted to give you guys an update on what I'm doing right now and how my life is kind of busy. Um, so if you're waiting for your personal statement, I'm gonna get it back to you as soon as possible. And it's just taking me a while because I have so much reading to do. On top of that, I'm trying to figure out how to kind of bundle everything together. But anyways, it's my problem. But wanted to include you guys in that challenge that I'm having. If you have any suggestions on how to manage my time better while in school, feel free to share on the chat. But anyways, let me go ahead and get it started because I feel that for those of you who are watching and for those of you who are going to join later, it's a better idea to get it started so that I can cover as much material as I want to for today's session. And although I said it's going to be an extensive overview of dental school, interview process, I had to, I had to limit my, limit some of the things that I want to talk about. And I'm planning to do more webinars in the coming weekends because you cannot finish talking about interviews and dental school interview processes is in just one sitting. In just one sitting, you have to spend at least a couple hours talking about that. So let me jump ahead and make this PowerPoint slide full screen. So for those of you who don't know me, let me introduce myself again. I'm the dental school coach. My name is Zia. I have graduated from Penn in 2013. I got accepted to 5 dental schools. You can see the names over there. Started dental school coach in 2014. Coached over 600 people over the last 2.5 years, and I've also done more than 100 mock interviews in the last few years as well. My success rate is 97%, and that basically means that out of every 100 students that I serve, at least 97% of the students get accepted to dental school every year. And some of my some of my students got into top schools like Harvard, Penn, Columbia, UCSF, and many more. So I'm going to show a slide where I kind of capture the schools that my students are going to right now. So you can see from this slide, this is probably like the top. These are the top schools in if you think of dental schools, and I have at least 1 or 2 students in each schools that I'm presenting here. So I'm really grateful about that, and I'm hopeful that you'll also benefit from the webinars that I do or the work that I do, and you'll also get into dental school because that's your dream. So you have to chase your dream and be successful at getting accepted. You may have come across this video which I did about a year ago. Got about 5,800 views. It's still growing in 3 secrets to winning dental school interview, and the video itself was not that it's not that great, but I think it had a good message and people resonated with it. You can see some of the testimonials that my students said about me, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I just want to mention that as a given in the webinar. Again, some more, and in the coming hour and a half that we have together, I'm going to present to you more solid materials. I don't want to be like the guys who just give you some testimonials and just show you some random stuff about them and not do a good job explaining how to do how to do what they're teaching. So for me, it would be dental school coaching and dental school interviewing. So basically, today's agenda is jam-packed. There are a few things I'm going to omit. I'm not going to talk about what to wear because I feel that I can cover that later. I'm also not going to do what to do and what not to do on the interview day because I feel that it just needs a lot of explanation and kind of like a bit more time. I don't have much time today to go over that within the 90 minutes that we have together, and I feel that more important for you guys would be right now to look at some of the common questions, some of the common styles of interviewing, and how to prepare for those questions, and then basically really approach your interview process from a story perspective instead of from a school by school perspective. Because if you have your story right, you have a great way of you have a great way of kind of bridging between what the interviewer is asking you to answer and things that you know about yourself. And I'm also gonna tell you about 3 things that you should do before you walk into the interview. And basically it's it's somewhat of a repeat from the last video that I've done. But anyways, let's go right in and talk about um, dental school interviewing. Now, I do want to caution you though, this is a long presentation. This is going to be about 60 to 75 minutes, and plus some time for Q&A. I do want to set some housekeeping rules. I'm checking the live chat frequently because I care about your questions, but at the same time I don't want to lose the flow of the presentation that I have. So I want to make sure that you guys are getting your questions answered, but at a time when we can take a break. Maybe I've been going too fast. You can slow me down and say, Zia, you're going too fast. Slow down right now. And in the slow down time, I can probably do some Q&A. But I do have some designated time at the end of this webinar to do some Q&A as well, because I feel just by presenting to you whatever I have is not sufficient. Your questions are also valuable content that we should all know about. Anyways, so let's go into the overview part. So what to expect? So dental, you have done your supplementals, you have done your primary applications, you have done basically everything that you need to do to send your application into the dental schools. Now you're just waiting for hearing back from the schools about the interview. Now in this time, I feel that you should prepare ahead of time so that you have some sort of advantage over others who are just going to prepare the night before or maybe 2 days before. You will gain so much advantage and edge by starting to prepare right now than by waiting to do the prep or do the mock interview at the last minute, which I don't recommend at all. So make sure that you are super prepared before you even go into the interview room. Now, why do dental schools interview candidates? And it's kind of fascinating why schools interview candidates, because they don't have to. Some of the schools that I know, like law schools do not accept. Law schools don't usually do interviews. I don't know if that has changed, but I've seen a lot of other school graduate programs or some undergraduate programs, they don't do interviews. So essentially, there are a few reasons to do interviewing. Interview is another way to filter out candidates that dental schools don't like. And what they're looking for is sociability. Sociability means that you are social, you can get along with other people, and basically, you're someone that they would like to spend the next 4 years with. And, in doing that, they're also looking at how you interact with your fellow classmate or fellow future classmates, and also fellow faculty members and deans of admissions and etc. They're just testing the waters to see how good you are in terms of your social skills, and whether you have the right intention to attend dental school. So for example, if you go to a dental school interview and you basically stay kind of silent, you don't talk to anyone, you kind of do your own thing, that does not rub as the right thing to do in the interview process. So they're expecting you to be social while you're although you're competing against everyone that you're meeting, at the same time you have to do well on your interview. So the main reason they're doing this interview, or they're testing this testing you through the interview, is because number one, they want to filter more people, and number two, they want to have a better grasp of who you are as a person and how sociable you are. And to be honest with you, dentistry is a very social profession. You have to be extremely social. You have to create personal relationship with your patient, and if you are not someone who can who can socialize or who can interact freely or openly with other students, other prospective students and other dental students, it would be tough for you to get an acceptance. So this link would be your best friend. This link, I already shortened it for you. So just this is a link for studentdoctor.net interview feedback page. So you can find different schools and what they have historically asked other dental school pre-dental candidates, and you can basically prepare based off that. I'll show it to you later down the line when we are talking about interview questions. So some of the common interview types. So the one that really freaks people out is the multiple mini interviews. It's basically a speed dating exercise for students, and basically it's a way of kind of getting to know you in a very short amount of time, and the way that you prepare has a huge impact on how you're going to do in the interview, because you only have maybe 8 to 10 minutes to get to ask question and also answer questions to an interviewer and you also then you're going to switch seats and you're going to go to a different interviewer. So it's a tough game, and I'll cover that in more details maybe in the next webinar. I can't really cover much of that because it's not the most common type of interview, but it has been the one that freaks people out the most. Group interviews are also very popular now because dental schools are looking at students who are better at interacting in groups, and better at and knowing what are some of the challenges you might face in a group, and what are some of the strengths you bring to the group, and that's why they do group interviews. There are a few schools that do group interviews. For example, USC is a big one. Multiple mini interviews. I think Ohio State does MMIs. MMIs are getting very popular. I don't know how effective they are in terms of understanding if a candidate would be a good candidate for dental school, but there are some research that are being done or already have been done that shows that MMIs improve a school's profile of what kind of students they're attracting. Usually they're trying to attract better candidates, and MMI is a way to do that. Number 3 is the one-on-one interview, which is very common, very popular. As I think this is the most traditional, and most dental schools would do that. For example, Penn, UCSF, they all had multiple one-on-one interviews. So these interviews range from somewhere between 30 to 40 minutes. It's pretty short given the 30 minutes, but it's better than MMIs because you don't have to quickly switch seats and do Q&As with someone within 10 minutes, which I think is much more difficult than doing one-on-one interviews. Anyway, so the two types of interviews that you're going to have based on the schools that you're going to do interview at is number 1, open file. Open file basically means that the interviewer has every information that they need about you, and they can look it up before they come to meet you, or they can look it up during the interview process. And a closed file basically means that interviewers do not have the information about you. They're just basically going to get to know you at the interview process. Okay, so the next step, you basically got an acceptance for an interview, and now you want to make sure that you have all the resources at your disposal. Okay, so first of all, bookmark that studentdoctor.net interview feedback page. I have gave you the link, so I'm gonna upload the PowerPoint to this YouTube video afterwards, so you can go back and check this out. Save all common questions that are being asked at the school, so I'll show you how to do that. Find out what type of interview that they're doing. So USC does MMIs. I know that because I've had students who not USC. USC does group interviews. Ohio State does MMIs. So basically you have to know what interview type they're doing so that you can prepare for it. And the interview feedback page is a great resource for you. The step number 2 is the research process. I've shown that to you extensively during my secondary application process, so I'm not going to go into much details about it today. But basically, you have to do online research about the school. You have to know the schools, in a great detail. So I recommend doing a lot of online search first. The online is first where you're going to start. Go to the school website, find out what sort of clinical education they offer, what sort of academic program they have. What is the class size, what type of program they're having, and then basically look at their curriculum and see if this is a good fit for you. And if it's not, that's okay, because you can adapt to it. Dental schools are selective, so getting into a dental school is the goal that you have. Number 2, look at their Facebook or LinkedIn pages, because Facebook has a wealth of information. Right now every school is on Facebook, so check out their Facebook page, the official Facebook page, and kind of find out what they're sharing. Those informations are pretty valuable for you to know. For example, are they doing Smiles Day or something? Are they doing some kind of innovative research? What kind of technology do they have? Those things are not easily found on the school's website, but you can find them easily on the school, on the Facebook page. Also, it's a great way to find students that are attending the school. Sometimes the schools would tag students on the Facebook page, so you may have a better idea, who goes to what school. And the final step is to talk to a student. So basically what you need to do is gain some stalking skills. You have to you have to basically connect to the students. And it's funny because most of the students that I have interacted with as a pre-dental student were delighted to talk to a prospective student. So they would be, you would be amazed by the amount of people that would be interested in talking to you because you're a prospective, let's say Ohio State student or a prospective UPenn student. So you need to make sure that you are reaching out to a student, and it's a valuable skill that you need in the later in your life. Networking is a huge deal of networking is a really important skills that you should have, and basically it's gonna help you get jobs later down the line as a dentist. And what you need to do is set up some time to talk to them, maybe 10 minutes. If they don't have time to talk to you over the phone, talk to them over Facebook or talk to them over some sort of social media like LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great example. And then once you're done with that, you're gonna create this Excel spreadsheet that I'm showing you right now. And in this Excel spreadsheet, what you'll do is basically jot down every question that you find from the schools that you are looking into, from the schools that you're applying, or from the schools that you got interview offer from. Now, in the first column, you're gonna write down the questions. Now, the questions are pretty common. The questions are basically very common, as some of the questions are easily repeated in multiple schools. So just jot them down and see. In the second column, write down what schools they are being asked at, because that's important. You don't want to put into effort if this is not a question that NYU is asking, or if this is not a question that Penn is asking. But definitely focus on writing down the school's name, because it's really useful. Then categorize them. I mean, I have a few categories here. Behavioral is basically, tell me about yourself. Why dentistry? Sometimes school specific questions are going to pop up, like why NYU, why Penn, stuff like that. Research questions would pop up. For example, tell me about your research, or what did you do at your research lab? Then shadowing experiences, etc. So categorize your question, because it will really help you prepare in a batch instead of doing it like randomly. So the next column is about the psychology of the question, and I'll go into more details about that. So for example, why do they ask you the question, why dentistry? It's to understand your intrinsic motivation behind going into this profession. And then in the final column, I'm going to go extensively in detail about that. It's basically creating the story that you're going to tell them, but by basically creating a good response to tell the outcomes. Now, when you're filling this out, focus on the first four columns first. Don't worry about the response plus story. That's something that you're gonna fill later. Okay, and you have to develop a story toolbox, and I'm gonna show you how to do that in this webinar today. So this is probably the most important thing I'll teach you today. So pay attention to the story. Pay attention to how I recommend that you create the story toolbox, and make sure that you take really good notes on that. So let's jump in and talk about how you're going to prepare for the interview. What are some of the things that you should do? How are you going to create that story toolbox that we talked about? What are some of the psychological some of the psychological reasons behind asking questions that schools like to ask? So let's jump right in and talk about that. We're doing very well on time, so I'm 20 minutes in, and I'm feeling pretty good about the timing. So we'll probably end just in time. So first of all, do not prepare backwards. What people do usually is that they have a question and they try to find an answer for that question when they're preparing for the interview. Now, that approach is not very useful. Because you're gonna do maybe 5-6 interviews. Some people do 7-8 interviews. It really depends on how many interviews you get. But the basic idea is that if you prepare for each question, you're not gonna be able to remember what you need to tell, the outcomes during the interview process. So it's an imperative that you prepare. This is a backward way of doing this. So I do not like creating answers for each questions, and it's kind of inefficient. So when you are applying when you're applying this skill to create your story toolbox, or to create the answers for your questions, you should look into, you know, go from answer to question. So you should prepare some of the answers before you look into the questions, and I'll show you what I mean later on when I talk more about that. Basically, this is a plan that allows you to create a systematic create systematic stories that you can repurpose for different questions. So for example, I'll give you more example, but basically, for example, let's say I'm an immigrant from Bangladesh, and I have been, overcoming a lot of obstacles, lot of challenges in my life, and I can connect that with multiple questions. I can talk about that in tell me about yourself question. I can bring that out in tell me about a time when you face hardship, etc. So what does a story toolbox look like, right? So, this is what basically I'm talking about. Repurposing your stories, using the same answer for multiple questions. So for, as I said, my immigration story and the hardship that I overcame, I can connect it with multiple questions. Tell me about yourself, tell me about your strengths, tell me about a time when you faced adversity, etc. So the second example I like to give is a pretty common example. So for instance, talk about a class project that did not go well and how I stepped into making it better. So, this is essentially a behavioral question that relates to working in a team, being a leader, solving conflicts, etc. Stuff like that. So you can use this you can use this story. You can essentially use this same story for multiple questions, like how do you work in a team? What's your teamwork style? Tell me about a time when things didn't go in your way, and how did you handle that, and how do you resolve conflict? Those questions are going to be like, you can use those. You can use these questions, and use the same story for that. So bottom line is that you have to repurpose your story. And if you do not repurpose your story, you're going to end up having a lot of stories that you'll forget what stories to use, what anecdotes to use, what examples to use during your during the interview process. All right. So this is a good time to take a few minute break and kind of give if you have any question at this moment, let me know. I can answer that within this short amount of break that we have, because I'm gonna move to a different section right after. So type in the chat box if you have any question. I do plan to go in details about the stories, so stay tuned. Okay, looks like there isn't any question yet. So let me jump right in and kind of show you what should you do to prepare for delivering your answer. Now, if you are part of SDN, if you're part of any kind of any kind of student groups or whatever, some people say just be yourself and you'll do fine in the interview, and that's a really big bullshit, because that's a big BS, because people need to prepare for the interview. Interview takes a lot of preparation. You can't, if you're just yourself, that's probably good for hanging out with your friends. It's not good enough for your interview. So, so basically, for the interview process, you have to make sure that you have a compelling way of structuring your answers so that you don't come across as inarticulate. You don't come across as someone who is naive or immature. You want to make sure that you are presenting yourself in the best way possible, and that is only doable if you can strategically learn how to answer the question. If you are just yourself during the interview, you might not even do well. So you need to make sure you are learning how to answer the questions. Now, I'm seeing two questions from YouTube. What if you do not have any interesting story? That's a bad question, because everyone has good stories to tell, and the reason you're saying that you don't have a good story is because you're not thinking hard enough about different activities that you're part of, about different things that you're doing on a daily basis. So if you're thinking that, oh, I don't have any good story, I would challenge you to reflect on your life and thinking through your activities that you're doing as a student, extracurricular activities, lab work, research work, blah blah blah. Look internally through your activities and your education, and see what have you been doing. What are some of the interesting things that that you have done over the last 5-6 years, and kind of talk about that. Because I feel everyone has a really interesting story to tell, even if you are like the most um, you know generic student ever. What is more important for you is to do a self reflection and find out what part of um, what part of my life has something meaningful that I can share with the admissions committee. What are something that I should talk about in my interview? And if you are struggling with it, that's why I have a mock interview service, and I'm going to talk more about that. So stay tuned until the end. And Choi is asking, will I upload this video later? Yes, I. This video is going to be uploaded onto YouTube directly, and I'll send out the link to you guys so that you can take a look at it. So let's move on. So here are a few more. The psychology of the interviewer. What are the interviewers are looking at? What are some of the things that they are trying to understand about you? So for example, when they ask you to talk about talk about a situation when you faced an ethical dilemma, they are caring about, they want to know whether you care about ethics. They want to know how do you handle ambiguous situations, because I feel that ethics is a huge part in dentistry. So for example, you are going to be a dentist, and you can prioritize money or you can prioritize patient care. As a future clinician, you have to balance between the two. So sometimes you'll face situations that are not just black and white, and it's pretty, it's gray. It's in the gray zone, and you're gonna have to adjust to that gray zone and be ethical in your practice of dentistry. So that's why this question is coming up a lot in different schools. So make sure you have a good answer for that. Tell me about a time when you worked with a team. This is a great question as well, because they're looking to understand how do you work in a team. As a dentist, you're going to be working in a team of 4 or 5, I don't know, depends on how many people you work with, but you're going to work in a team, and they want to understand what's your working style. They also want to understand how do you effectively manage time while working with the team. What are some of the contributions that you make while you are working with the team? So that's what they're looking to understand. And finally, what's your leadership style? Or tell me about a time when you led someone or led a team. This is basically their way to understand how do you lead. What are your leading style? As a future dentist, you're going to be a leader of a practice. If you're managing a practice, if you're not managing a practice, you're in charge of a team of hygienists, a team of assistants. So how do you manage them? How do you handle tough situations? That's what they're looking to understand. And this to be able to see their rationale, their reasoning behind asking these questions will help you help you craft your answer better. So make sure whenever you're looking at an answer on interview feedback page, always go back to the psychology. Fill out why am I being asked that question? Why do they need to ask this question to me? Okay, so having said that, do you guys have any question about the psychology of the interviewer? Some of the questions are pretty straightforward, such as why dentistry. Some of the questions are not so straightforward. So, for example, ethical dilemma. So you need to kind of talk to other people, or talk amongst your peers and see why are some of the questions being asked. And if you can't understand, let's say, some of the harder questions, just basically ask an admissions counselor from one of the schools, or talk to your pre-health advisor. They'll explain why why you have those questions being asked in dental school interviewing. So how do you present your story? This is absolutely important, because once you go into an interview, it doesn't matter what type of interview it is, what style it is. A few things are really important. Do not ever answer things in abstract terms, or do not ever answer something without giving an example, or without presenting a graphic details about graphic details about your life, or graphic details of the situation that you're in, so that they can understand, they can see what you've been through, they can understand, and they can basically empathize with you. And be as much as specific as as you can, because if you're not as specific, they are going to ask you more specific questions because they want to know you more, and it doesn't really go well for an interview. You want to present them with more, more details, enough details, I wouldn't say more, but enough details so that they are not asking you follow-up questions. So for example, when you talk about teamwork, a common follow-up question is, so what did you do in the team? Or maybe like, also, what happened at the end? That's a very common follow-up question, and you want to avoid those type of situation, because you want to give them the full picture. You want to give them the example that shows from start to the finish. And if you can't do that, they are not going to be convinced that you're going to be a good fit for them. Okay. So how do you frame your story? There is a great way to frame it. I follow the STAR principle. STAR basically means situation, task, action, and result. It's an acronym, and the reason I like this STAR framework is because it really makes it easy for anyone to follow your train of thoughts, because what happens is that sometimes people are saying things and they are rambling and they don't know what they're going at. Like, maybe if it's a tough question, they can sometimes lose their train of thought and they don't know what they're going for. And at that time, having that STAR framework is absolutely needed for you to like get back on track and kind of go from start to finish without getting distracted or without getting sidestepped by by your rambling, or whatever you're doing at that moment. So I used to zone out a lot when I'm answering questions. So I started to prepare things ahead of time. I started to kind of think about things in the STAR framework, and I'm going to go into details about this. And basically what it helps me do is allow me to create a frame of reference for my story. So let me give you an example. I mentioned about the project that I was doing, the class project that I'm doing, and many of you can relate to that because a lot of you didn't have work experience yet. So many of you probably had a class project that you can talk about. Let me take a sip of water first. So for example, in a situation that you're in is that you are doing group project with 5 other individuals, and at some time the individual cannot agree on a certain task that you're assigned, and you guys are having a conflict. You cannot come to an agreement. So the task that you're assigned is basically, you are assigned to a group project. You're probably not the leader at that group, and you're basically trying to create harmony within the group. Now, because there is a disagreement within the group, now what action are you going to take? You're going to be, you're going to step up as the leader, and you're just going to guide the team to finish the work, and you're going to create harmony within the team, and that's the action you're taking, right? And the resolution is that basically the team found a good place, a common place that they can agree on, and they finished their task on time, and they got a good grade on the project. So something like that would be a very small, very straightforward example of the STAR framework in practice, because the STAR framework is so powerful. You can use it anywhere as long as you know what story you're going to tell, and if you apply the STAR framework on it, repurposing the stories become a really easy task. Okay, so let me jump right in and go to the next point. Be as concise as possible. No one likes rambling. No one wants you to hear yourself talking. You don't want to hear yourself talking for 5 hours. So make sure that you are not talking for long. Keep your answers pretty short. I would say within 2 minutes or less, if you can. If you have a lot of things to say, maybe it could go up to 2.5 minutes, but never answer anything more than that. I think a threshold for people is 1 minute when they start zoning out. So make sure they're not zoning out. They're kind of in sync with what you're telling them. use your body language, use projection to show confidence in your answer, to show that you're pointing out things that are interesting, and but don't go off topic, because if you go off topic, it's really hard to come back. And also, as I mentioned before, provide as much as much specific examples as you can, and whenever you can in the process. So now, in terms of body language, which is one of the most important delivery style and needed for a great answer, is that you have to smile, but you have to do it strategically. You don't want to show up, you don't want to show up to an interview and kind of become this guy or girl who's smiling too much or not smiling enough. You want to be at a middle page. You want to smile enough so that they feel that you are friendly, you are someone who they can socialize with, or grab a beer with later down the line. So don't be a robot. Try to make some eye contact, not too much. Don't look at them like in a stern way. Look at them, make frequent eye contacts. And it's hard to explain when you don't have someone visually demonstrating it to you. But basically, when you show interest with when you show interest towards someone, eye contact is one of the most important thing that people look at in the US. And for some of you who are international students or have not had chance of working in the US, eye contact, making that eye contact, making that creating that eye contact would be really important for you, because you wanna establish that rapport right away. And it's kind of hard. I'm coming from Bangladesh, and we don't really do eye contact in my country, so I had to learn it in the hard way. And so make sure that when you're practicing at home or with someone, practice eye contact in a meaningful way that adds to the conversation, not intimidate someone or make someone feel that you are not making enough eye contact. Don't slouch when you're in front of the interviewer. Make sure you sit straight. This is going to help you in a few ways. Number one, you're going to be more active during the interview, and you're also going to be listening very actively, which is really important. If you slouch, it shows that you're not really interested in them. And interviewers are probably interviewing 5-10 candidates a day, so they know what type of candidates they're expecting. And if you slouch, that might show them that you're not really interested in their school. And this is probably the last message you want to send to them. Okay, so make sure you don't slouch. And when I did my interview with other students, I had to kind of tell them not to slouch. I've seen a few students who just slouched because they're just like really tired and bored. And look, you're probably going to be bored in the interview process. It's not always conversation based. Most of the time it's going to be very engaging conversation. They just want to get to know you. But sometimes it could be just like, shooting questions and you giving them answers. So make sure you sit straight and not, don't slouch. All right. So again, some of the repetitive messages, because I want to make sure that you understand this, you understand this clearly. Do not ramble. Don't sound like you're desperate. Maybe like you have only one interview and you kind of come across as saying, oh, NYU is the best school in the world. It's the only school that I want to go to. Don't do that, because it shows that you're desperate and you don't have confidence in yourself. If you have only one interview, talk to me as to what you should do. Sometimes, if you have a lower GPA, lower DAT score, you might just end up getting one interview if you're lucky, and that interview might make it or break it for you. So you want to make sure that you're presenting yourself in the most professional manner possible. Do not lie on your interview. It's a great no-no. If they find out that you lied to them at any point, they're gonna, if they accept you, they can send you rejection after they accepted you. Make sure you don't say anything negative about anything. Don't bring anything about politics or don't provide a political answer. Sometimes they might ask you to challenge your viewpoints, and they might ask you a political question. Stay away from giving that. Stay away from giving a partisan answer. Provide something that's more tactful or diplomatic. And again, the last thing that I want to warn you about is mentioning the wrong story. So sometimes what happens is that if you have too many stories on your toolbox, you might just forget what stories you need to use, and kind of like you're going to use a story that you don't even want to say it at that, for that question. That's why I want to heavily emphasize on creating that spreadsheet that I showed you in the beginning, that will help you to just systematize and structure your thoughts and your answers. All right, so let's go into talk about some of the common questions. But before doing that, I want to answer some of your concerns and some of your questions, because I feel that this is a good stopping point again. So if you have any question, type it in on the chat box. I'm seeing one question from someone. If they ask you to talk about a mistake you have made, excuse me, how extreme of a mistake do you bring up? So this is essentially a mistake. This is essentially a trick question of just basically them basically asking you, what are some of your weaknesses? What are some of the things that you kind of, probably have done wrong or made mistakes? So number one rule of thumb: you don't talk about any kind of religious stuff or political stuff. Don't bring out something that that could be sensitive. And I don't have to talk about that, because a lot of you are probably involved in your in probably the Democrat club or Republican club in your campus. I don't know if you are, but I'm just making this up. But if you are involved in that, don't mention it in the interview, because it might backfire. Some of the mistakes that I think you can talk about are safe mistakes that you have overcome, or you have been working towards overcoming. So for example, a common mistake people make is being selfish in a group project and not realizing the value of doing the group work, and instead they just try to, number one, get all the credit for the work they have done, or not giving any credits to the other people that they are working with. So if you have made that mistake, make sure that you can talk about a next project that you have done, where you gave the appropriate credit to the people that deserved it, or you have distributed the work that needed to be distributed evenly, and not just done by someone on the group. Most of the time, if you're doing a group project, a lot of the time you will see freeloaders, which basically means that you don't do any work, but you kind of try to take the credit for the teamwork. So if you have been a freeloader, it's not a grave mistake, but you have been working towards improving it. You've been working on your habits. You have been doing more projects so that you can contribute in your skills towards. Stuff like that are common answers and safe answers. You don't go into some territory where you're saying something really negative or really bad about you. And in that case, that's when you're jeopardizing your your chances of getting into a dental school. How would you handle a situation where one of your patient has AIDS? Can you be more specific about what do you mean by one of your patient has AIDS? What do you mean by that? And if someone asks me this question, I'll probably clarify it first. So are we talking about patient care perspective, or are we talking about are we talking about something completely different, such as keeping patient information safe? So the AIDS question could be talked about in multiple different angles. So if your patient has AIDS, you try to treat them at a day when you don't have any other patients, or you don't have a high volume. It's just because you want them to feel comfortable. You want them to feel sure. Okay, so if you have a patient who has AIDS, so it gets a bit tricky, because I've seen a lot of patients with HIV/AIDS that went to the dentist. So you cannot just treat them by just by providing a dental treatment. You have to talk to their physicians and also their other providers first, before you create a treatment plan for them, because AIDS patients or HIV patients are kind of they're very immunocompromised. So what that means is that anything that you do may have other consequences. So you want to make sure that you are on the safer side as a provider, as a dentist, and you want to provide them with the most valuable information, the most valuable information, because if you don't provide them, if you don't provide them good service, as a provider, you're not doing a good job. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you have all the information that you need to successfully treat them. So I think I hope that answered your question. The other question I got is, if you have a sad life story and this led um, if you have a sad life story and this led me to immigrate to the US, should I tell this story? Well, it depends of how sad it is. So, for example, don't bring up things that are extremely sad. Like I don't know, like if your parents died and then you migrated to the US. I don't know. I mean, that is probably a good story to tell. That's a fine story to tell. But if it's something like, if you're part of a gang back in your country, and then you kind of wanted to escape jail, and that's why you came to the US, that's probably not the story that you're not going to tell them. So I'm not sure, maybe we can talk one-on-one about your situation and kind of find out why you migrated to the US, and we can probably find a common ground where you have a compelling story to tell. And for most of the people that comes to the US, it's not because they are it's because they come to the US for a better life, and it's okay to share that story. For example, my parents came, my mother came from Bangladesh because she wanted to give us a good education, a good lifestyle in the US, and that's one of the major reasons we came to the US, and it's going to be absolutely fine to talk about that. So I hope I answered all of your questions in the meantime. So let's jump back to the presentation and kind of finish that up. So one of the common question is, tell me about yourself. And it's very common. Everyone is going to ask you the same question. If they don't ask you, it's fine. But it's kind of an anomaly, because the first thing they would like to know about you is basically where you're from, what you have studied in college, what activities have you been involved in, what do you do outside of your school. So those are things that they want to learn. So basic idea is to keep it very short. Keep it under 2 minutes if possible. If not, under 3 minutes. So mention where you're from. So for example, I would say, I'm originally from Bangladesh. I migrated here when I was 15, and then I went to high school here for about 2 years before moving to college. And in college, I went to University of Penn, where I studied chemistry and international relations. Now you have an unconventional major or minor, whatever degree you have to explain why you have that. So if, for example, I always said, I wanted to know the science as well as the global health perspective of delivery of healthcare, and that's why I did 2 majors in college, something like that. And then you talk about what activities are you involved in. So I was part of a research project that I did. I talked about that. I also talked about some of the clubs that I was involved in, and I ended up talking about some of the things that I like to do. For example, hiking is a big part of my life, so I talk about that, and maybe music is part of your life, or singing or dancing, something that you really like to do, and mention that in this segment of the interview. This is very common, so make sure you prepare a good answer, but practice it. But don't memorize it, because sometimes they kind of tweak the questions, and based on the question that they're trying to ask you, you have to answer that specific question and not something that's kind of memorized or rehearsed heavily. All right. So the next question is, why dentistry? This is a very common question as well, and they're probably gonna ask you this question everywhere. So there are a few acceptable answers, and you don't want to invent something different. You don't want to create some random answers for this. This is very straightforward. People go to dentistry because they're passionate about arts, music, or dance, so something creative. They also have a love for science. They also have a passion for doing handwork, so manual dexterity related work. Interest in leadership / entrepreneurship. Most of the dentists are going to have their own practice. So if you talk about being a leader, being entrepreneur, that's also a great story to talk about. So don't go beyond that. I mean, if you have something that you want to, run by me, definitely feel free to do that, because sometimes people try to, kind of find creative answers for why dentistry, and it doesn't really go very well with them. Now, dentistry is very much different from medicine because it provides you a better lifestyle, better flexible lifestyle. It's okay to mention at the end of the question, so you can say, I really like how dentists create their own routine and schedule, especially when they have their own practice, and that really attracted me to this profession. That's an acceptable answer, but it should be the last point. It should not be the first point, because you have to have intrinsic motivation for this profession. You can't just say, I want to be a dentist because it's a flexible lifestyle and I'll make a shit ton of money. That is not going to go very well. You have to mention your passion for science and how that is combined in dentistry with the passion for arts and passion for handiwork. Let's go back to a question. How do you, yeah, you can talk about a game that you play outside of school. So, for example, soccer, frisbee, whatever. Yeah, that's fine. So, another trick question that come up a lot is, what are your weaknesses? And it's a trick question because what they're really looking for, again, it's like the mistake question. What have you been doing to improve this? What are some of the steps that you have taken? So talk about your weaknesses. Mention a story about your weakness and kind of show them what you have been doing. So, just to give you an example, one of my biggest weaknesses is that I am not very good at leading large teams. So once I have, maybe if I have a team of 15, I'm not very good at leading that team. But if I have a team of maybe 5, I'm much better at leading that small team because I have that small team dynamics. So what I've been doing is to take on small projects where I have to lead cross-functional teams. That basically means that I'm leading teams in different places and connecting them together, maybe in small projects. Maybe it's not my full-time job, but maybe in places where I'm doing a small project. So for example, let's say I'm doing Toastmaster International, which is basically a place where you do public speaking, and you are like the leader of that group, and it's something that you do outside of your work or outside of your school. So if you're interested in that, let's say you are leading a group of 20 Toastmaster International members, and that's something you can mention as a step towards improving your weakness. And anything that shows that you're trying actively towards making yourself better is a great answer. It does not have to be any cliche answer. So a lot of people say, oh, I take too many things on my plate, and when I realize that I have too much things, I tend to drop things off or become MIA. That's a really, really bad answer because it's cliche, number one, and you don't want to sound like you have really poor time management skill. Dentistry needs, in dental school you need a really good time management skills, and if you don't have that if you're going in, they're not going to trust you to have that in dental school. So make sure you don't talk about something that's very risky to talk about. So that's, if you have a specific weakness in mind that you want to talk about, feel free to run it by me when you do a mock interview with me. So that's about weakness. So let me give you some specific tips about what not to do and what to do in the interview process, because sometimes interviewing is kind of difficult, and you want to make sure that you are doing the best you can. Now, in terms of the first tips is that smile strategically. If people who smile often, they're perceived as social and friendly. People who smile too much are perceived as not serious and flirty sometimes. People who don't smile at all can be perceived as aloof and not interested. So you have to take a middle ground. You have to take a ground where you're smiling strategically. So for example, if the interviewer smiles, you're gonna try to smile because you wanna mirror them. People that mirror each other usually like each other. So for example, if the interviewer is doing something, let's say, if he's telling a joke, you have to laugh at, you have to smile at that, or if you have to laugh at that, or if you're telling a joke, the interviewer is gonna laugh at that. So basically, you have to create the dynamic, right? It's not easily doable if you're not coming from that background where you're easily sociable. So you have to do some practice. So in terms of smiling, when you pick up your Starbucks coffee next time, make sure you talk to the barista and kind of give her a smile. It's kind of creepy to do that, but you're practicing for free. When you're I think 90% of the time, the thing that I have to tell everyone of my student while doing a mock interview is to tell them to smile, because they're too serious about the interview, or too nervous, and when you're nervous, you forget to smile. So make sure that you feel confident, comfortable, and you smile strategically. Record yourself. This is the most important thing you can do to prepare for your interview. If you can't record yourself, I'll do a Skype interview with you, the mock interview, and then I will record you, and you will see how you're doing compared to, when you started, or compared to, let's say you have a really bad body language when you started, and you'll see how you're improving, or what are some of the mistakes you're making. So make sure that you apply recording yourself, very rigorously and seriously. Not just body language, you can also know if your answers are bad or your answers are good. You should just find out what type of answers you're giving. And if you have some sort of repetitive or weird behavior, so for some people, like they suck their thumb, or they just bite their nails even if they are at an interview. So if you have those kind of repetitive weird behaviors, you record yourself so that you can early on tackle those problems before going into the interview room, or at least you're self-aware of these issues that you have, and you can actively do something to improve those. All right, so mock interview. So ask your friends to do mock interviews for you, family members. If you can't find friends and family members, I totally understand, and that's why I offer a mock interview service, and I'm going to talk about the service more in depth. But before I do that, I want to take a few more questions, and I also want to show you something that I told you that I'll show you today. So let me jump right in and show you this. Okay, so I have opened up the dental school interview feedback page, and what you can do is basically type in dental school name. Let's say I want to do Penn Dental. So I can go to Penn Dental School, and I can just look into this. So there are two ways you can do this. You can either look into someone else's interview feedback, or you can give your own feedback. So for right now, I'm just looking at interview feedback. So I don't need to go anywhere. I'm on this page. So interview feedback is right here in this middle section. So you can look at the stress level. Most of the people say stress is around 3.37, which is pretty low stress interview. What do you think of the school? Most people said around 8.11. So view all questions and response. Basically when you do that, you get excuse me, you basically see all the questions that were asked at the interview at Penn for the last couple of years. So for example, what is one specific question they asked you? I see you have a lot of XYZ experience. Why not then that field? So for example, a lot of people are career switcher. They have a lot of business related experiences or healthcare IT related experience, and they might get that question, why not getting a degree in that field? Why dentistry? So basically it's a version of why dentistry question, right? So show more responses. Tell me more about your research. So research is a very common question. So you need to prepare a succinct way of telling the interviewer what your research was about. A lot of the time people go into too much detail, and the admissions person might not know what the hell you're talking about. So make sure you can talk about your research to a 10-year-old, and if you can talk about your research to a 10-year-old and make him understand what you do as a undergraduate researcher, I think you're successful. If you can't do that, you'll also be unsuccessful in the interview. So make sure you have some brief answer. You have some really generalized version of what you do as in your undergraduate research. Some other questions that they ask are, explain a time when you faced a challenge and how did you overcome that. So that's a version of like one of the stories that I mentioned. My team was having a huge conflict and I had to jump in and kind of lead the team. And if you can also talk about, if you're an immigrant like me, you can talk about your immigrant status, and how hard it was for you in the beginning. Excuse me. What has been the best and the worst experiences? What have been the best and the worst experiences in college? So again, this question is kind of interesting because it kind of not just talks about what have you done in college, but also kind of it asks you to prioritize what are some of the things you're going to talk about. So now in terms of negative experiences, never mention, again, the rule of thumb is never mention anything negative. Don't say that your school is a piece of crap, or did not have XYZ facilities. So in terms of negative, be very tactful. What was the worst thing that happened to you in the school? Maybe you can talk about the fact that the school did not offer many diverse classes that you wanted to take, or maybe you could not take some of the interesting classes that you wanted to take because you're pre-med or pre-dental. So it kind of diverse the question, and not, you're answering the question in a very tactful way, so you're not producing any negative answer. Excuse me. So someone is asking that if they ask me, tell me about yourself, can I ask, could you be more specific? No, hell no. If they ask you to tell you about yourself, just talk about where you're from, what major you've done, if you have worked outside of undergraduate, so talk about that. Talk about what you do outside of work, stuff like that. Don't ask them to be more specific because it's rude. Number one, it's sort of like if it's a question like, oh, what would you do if a patient with HIV/AIDS come in, and I can ask more clarifying question about that, but you cannot ask them, tell me about yourself, as a follow-up question. So the next thing I want to show you is basically how I used it. So basically I looked at what was the average, or what is the length of the interview that people did at Penn. So you can see the max is 30 minutes. So, or not the max, the mode is 30 minutes, which basically means that most of the interview are within 30 minutes. So some of them are 25 minutes and some of them are 35 minutes. Some of them are very good that they're 40 minutes, 45 minutes. So again, there is no right or wrong answer, but I would say if your interview is within like 10-15 minutes, it's probably not a good idea. I mean, that means that you're not able to connect with the interviewer, you're not able to make connections with them, and create a meaningful conversation with them. A lot of the interviews these days are more about conversation, even though they have this question and answer aspect of it. They exit. Those people are going to ask you that question or ask you specific details about your life, based on the conversation that they're having with you, based on the triggers that you mentioned to them. So it's very much in your control, even though a lot of people think that interviews are not in your control. It's very much within your control. So make sure that you're taking advantage of it, pushing them to the direction that you want them to know about you, and don't let them ask you a really uncomfortable question. And it really depends on you, because based on how based on how much you interact with them in the interview process, or what level of discussions you're having, what type of discussions you're having with them, you can always nudge them to ask you the questions that you want them to ask. You want them to ask you. All right, and it's a very advanced concept, and you can talk to me more about that if and do more mock interviews. All right, so I'm not going to show you a lot of other things, but you can also know about tours and travels. Basically, what what are some of the hotels and blah blah blah. You can I don't know, like hotels and other things that you can use to get to the school. So let me close this out and let me go back to the PowerPoint slide, because I want to talk about the mock interview service, because a lot of the students are interested in that. So the mock interview service, and this is basically one of my flagship product, and I'm not gonna lie about it, because I probably do a lot of, a lot of people know me because of my mock interview services, and you have probably seen some of those on YouTube, and I really want to make sure that you get the best benefit out of it. This webinar is probably good enough for understanding the overall dynamics of an interview process, but to get to the to get to a position where you are so good at interviewing, you need to do a lot of mock interview. And my mock interview service is different from everyone else's, for a few reasons. No, number one, it's 60 minutes and it's real deal. It's half an hour of interviewing and half an hour of feedback plus repeating your answers. So what happens is basically, let's say I'm talking to you, and I'm asking you a question as an interviewer. We role play, and I'm asking you a questions as an interviewer, and I feel that you're not giving me a good answer, or some really bad answer. I'm gonna stop you right there. I'm gonna give you some guidance, and I'm gonna ask you to repeat the answer. So it's very interactive. It's very very helpful for people that feel that they don't know what to answer, or they don't have good interesting stories to talk about. So if you're in that boat, if you're on that boat, definitely look into the mock interview service. And I'm gonna also tell you more about some discounts you can get today. The mock interview service is actually school specific. If you want it to be generalized, I can make it generalized for you, but it's more school specific because I want you to have the best experience going into the school. I want you to have simulated experiences before you even enter the school premises. It's very personalized for you. So let's say you're slouching a lot. I'm gonna yell at you and tell you like, oh, you shouldn't slouch. I'm also providing you an uploaded video on YouTube that's private, fully, it's completely private. That helps you understand your weak spots and basically helps you to work on those weak spots in the future. And you have 24/7 texting access with me. So basically that means that you can always text me about any question that you have or any concerns that you have about the interview process. It's really helpful for students who are feeling a bit nervous. It's kind of like, oh, I want to give them a nudge to do better at the interview. It's a confidence boost sometimes. So take a look at this text that someone sent me. It's amazing because I really like texting my student, although it's kind of like weird because a lot of the other service providers don't do that. But when you text me, you get to really know me better, and I also get to know you a lot. And basically, a lot of the other providers, other service providers, don't give you texting access. I give you my personal cell phone number. You can text me whenever you want. If you have any question, it doesn't have to be related to interviewing. It could be related to other things. You can ask me those as well via text. Now the pricing for the mock interview services is a bit more expensive than it has been last year because this has been one of my popular courses, and I'm not gonna be fake about it. It's more expensive for a reason. I invest a lot of time in making sure that you have the best experience, learning how to interview, and becoming better at doing the interviews that you do. So I want to make sure that you're getting the most out of you're getting the most out of the experience that you're having with me, so that once you get to the interview location, you are at your best foot forward. So I have 4 sessions. You can buy 4 different sessions, and I don't recommend buying more than 4 sessions because it doesn't really make sense. You should be well prepared by 4 sessions. But if you need more sessions, you can always ask me, and we can work it out. So now, this is a discount that I'm providing just for you guys because you're a loyal base, loyal fan base, and you have been supporting me throughout. So for tuning into the your webinar, I really respect your time because you're spending this time to learn about how to do dental school interview. I want to make sure that you get something out of this as well. So I'm offering a 5% discount on whatever service you want to get from the mock interview page. But this is only available for this is only available until 7:30 Eastern time, so maybe within 3 hours. So send me an email at dentalschoolcoach@gmail.com and tell me, in the subject header, write interview discount, and I'll send you a link with 5% discount. You're not gonna get that from the website, and this is only available until tonight until 7:30. So You don't have to buy it you don't have to buy the service tonight. You can get the link for the cheaper price that might be useful for you later down the line. So make sure that ask me for the 5% discount, even if you don't want to buy it right now because you don't have an interview. But let's say down the line in October you get an interview and you want to use that 5% discount. You're able to do that. People that are not tuning in or not watching the interview webinar tonight or this evening, whatever time zone you are based in, you are not going to be able to use this 5% discount. So because you are tuning in today, I'm giving you that 5% discount. So send me an email at dentalschoolcoach@gmail.com. So I talked a lot today, so let me know if you have any question. This is a Q&A time. It's my personal time with you. So if you have any question that you want to ask, send that on the chat box. I'm looking at the chat box right now, so I can honestly answer your question. So yeah, it's worth it for any student. I mean, you don't have to be based in the U.S. I have helped people over from India, people from UK. I've helped people from even Syria. Of all the places. What are the other programs you are running for pre-dental? So I have multiple services. I provide a one-on-one coaching service that goes from the whole year. I also provide services for personal statement, secondary statements, as well as your ADSYS application. And then after you get accepted to dental school, you can talk to me about your financial situation or loan situation, whatever you want to talk about, scholarships, and you want to write more essays for a scholarship. You can come back, talk to me. And thanks, man. Thanks thanks for saying that you love me and love my channel. What if you don't have any research done in undergraduate? It doesn't matter. A lot of your classmates are not going to have research under their belt. Research experience is not a necessity for dental students. It might be a more important thing for pre-med. Research is not a needed thing for you as an undergraduate. Do you have experience with AGD programs? I don't have experience with AGD programs, but if you have questions that you want to bring up from the AGD program and you want to do a mock interview, I'm definitely down to do that. When is the latest you have ever heard from someone ever hearing back from a school acceptance? Like what month in a cycle? Okay, so this is a really interesting question. I think the last they've heard back was from the wait list. They've heard back by like July-ish, and they had to pack up their bag and kind of go to dental school within a month or so. Late for ADSYS. Okay, when do you think is late? This is a funny question because I had a student last year who got accepted by applying in December. She took the DAT in November and applied in December, and she still got accepted. So I really don't know what is late, but honestly, if you don't want to be applying in September, I recommend applying within August to have the best option for you. But if you apply right now, it's a good time. If you apply later, it's a bad time. So applying later than August maybe would be not ideal for you. When do you usually get invitation back for an interview after submitting your application? So it really depends. So for people that have already gotten their application done and everything, they should be starting to hear back within a few weeks. So late August is when people start to hear back. And also people start doing interviews in late August. So maybe you might hear back within a week or so if you have applied early. If you have applied in the middle of June or July, you should hear back in early September. My first interview was in September. My second interview was in October. Third and fourth one were in November, and the last one that I had was in January. So it really depends on really depends on when you submitted your application. It also depends on sending everything thoroughly. So for example, if you took your DAT late, the schools might not process your application early. So you want to check in with them and kind of understand what they're looking into. I watched that video for the late applicant. It was for Touro, and she did have good, yeah, she did have good stats. She had I think 22 DAT or something, 23 DAT. I forgot what she had exactly, but she was, she had above average GPA and DAT. So So I'm not gonna give you any discount if you haven't bought from me previously, but if you have already bought from me, I'm providing a 5% discount as well. So it's gonna be on top of the 5% discount that you're getting today. So if you get if you already bought from my personal statement service or secondary statement service, you're gonna get an additional 5% discount, just because you have been buying from me. Is 1 month enough for interview practice? Yeah, hell yeah. 1 month is way more enough time. But I think you should start as early as possible. As long as you have some kind of deadline under your belt, you should be practicing intensively. But 1 month is a good enough time. Should you take the DAT before applying? It doesn't matter. You can apply and then take the DAT. You should apply ASAP if you are trying to apply this year, and take the DAT within September or October. The dental school is pretty new and they don't even require students. Okay, so again, I don't want to make any specific comments about Touro. Touro has really high DAT requirements, which is very bizarre for a new school like that. For example, University of New England, which is also a new school, they have a DAT requirement of like 17 or 18, but Touro has an average DAT of 20. So it's really interesting. What's the lowest GPA students you've worked with and that gained acceptance? So my lowest GPA student is 2.9, but again, if you have 2.9, I don't really guarantee you that you're gonna get in, because it's really rare. But the guy and the girl that got accepted with the 2.9, they also had some extensive extracurricular activities, such as like community service activities. Plus, they also did a lot of they probably did some kind of post-bac program or something like that. But again, with the post-bac, the GPA was 2.9. Without the post-bac, it was probably like 2.5, 2.6. So really depends, and it's not a good question to ask, because your goal is to get into a dental school. It's not to get into dental school because you have a low GPA. Low GPA is a big deterrent for dental schools to accept you. You have to show some kind of motivation or some kind of things that you have done, such as post-bac program, taking more classes to improve your chances. Alrighty, do you guys have any more questions? I'm seeing a lot of questions, a lot of interaction. I really love this. And I love working with you guys. So let me know if you have any more questions. And if not, you're free to go. I know 15 people are still watching, and it's a blessing for me. I am really blessed to have served you. So let me know if you have any more questions. You can always email me at dentalschoolcoach@gmail.com, the email address that I just posted online. So Julie is asking if private schools pick international students as much as they pick residents. It's a really tough question to answer. Every school is different. Private school or public school, I don't know if that's a determinant, but schools that have in state policy, they probably are not going to take international students. But schools, usually private schools like Boston University or Penn or NYU, they are more likely to accept someone who is international, just because they have bigger class size and they want diversity. What does cumulative GPA mean? Is this mean last some units of semester? No, cumulative means that it's basically the total average GPA of your undergraduate and your graduate studies. It's basically an average GPA of everything included. Can you provide the link for interview feedback page from SDN? Yes, I can. I am going to provide that right now so that you have it. Don't judge my YouTube page. I have really interesting suggestions. So I don't watch everything that gets suggested. not this one. Here's the link. Okay, can you provide the link? Okay, I did. Julie, you should buy the ADA guide for how many? Yeah, so how important is volunteer work? Volunteer work is pretty important. It depends on it. It doesn't matter what kind of volunteer work, but a lot of schools are looking into the volunteer work because they want to see how involved you are within the community, and they wanna um, basically gauge what level of commitment you have towards contributing to society. So yeah, you should do volunteer work if you can, or if you have time. Um, okay, Julie, I recommend getting the offline book that just came out a few days ago. It's $50. It's kind of expensive, but I think it tells you a better. It basically tells you a good amount of things that you should know about how many applicants are getting accepted. I work as a front desk receptionist, sometimes dental assistant. How do you think that they will like? Okay, so dental assistant, dental receptionist. I mean, this is pretty common. It's not like it's uncommon. They like it. It's not like you're coming from zero background. You have some background, so they're definitely gonna like it. But the problem is that you're competing against other people that have like the same credential. So I would not just base my application just based on that. I would also want to make sure that I'm getting a really good GPA, I have a really good DAT score. Those are important as well. All right, Julie? Anything else? I'm really liking it because everyone is heavily, you guys are really, really involved in this, and I'm getting a lot of questions today. Um, so, um, excuse me. Is the payment, let's say around 600,000 with the loan? What's that? Is the loan worth it? It depends on who you ask. I don't know, honestly. It really depends on who you ask. Some would say that it's worth it because you are making a lot of money after being a dentist. So it really depends on who you talk to. I personally think that you should go to a cheaper school because as a dentist you're getting the same education. Do you think being a dental hygienist will help my chances? Yes, it will. Question for service: are you providing? Oh, sure, sure. The year-long service, send me an email. I can talk to you more about that. So basically, what I do is I work with you every month. Basically, help you strategize what sort of activities you should be part of. What are some of the ways you can enhance your GPA, and what ways you can, how you can start working towards your DAT score, or how working towards taking the DAT, and basically it's a program for only people that are that are committed to becoming a dentist, or committed to going to dental school, and they know it early on. I'm not going to talk about the pricing on the video because I don't think it's relevant for the webinar, but send me an email and we can work out a pricing. The pricing it's very fair. It's a monthly basis, so we talk every month, and we basically work on things that you should be doing in that month or in the next 3-4 months to become competitive as a dental pre-dental student. Again, the way you can find out more about the year-long program is just by talking to me on the phone. I don't have that on the website yet because I'm still doing it on a low scale. It's not like the personal statement service where I help like 200 students. It's a more intimate setting where I only work with a few students. I only work with maybe like 5 to 8 students every year. So it's something very, very private and very personalized. And the email address is dentalschoolcoach@gmail. All right, guys. So it has been great to it has been great to have you guys on the webinar, and I would highly recommend staying on the email list so that you can get to the next webinar as well. I plan to do it within next 2-3 weeks, so stay tuned, and look forward to working with you more. All right, take it easy, guys.